all there. We have all your attention because we will begin another set of three really interesting session, a bit more on purpose and philosophical topic. So the next topic is a really important topic on impact and in private debt, and Nabil and Sergio will tell us about what is happening behind the scenes in impact in private debt. So it's a panel of with Nabil Massi, the CEO of INOKS Capital, and Sergio Sanchez Toledo, the senior impact analyst for INOKS, both coming from Switzerland. And it's really important because they were really in precursor in terms of impact in emerging markets and agri and food, and they will tell us how impact is eventually also doing a setback or not, or performing or not. And I have the pleasure to welcome them both and for this great session.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction and the opportunity, of course, as an associated member. Thanks a lot to LuxFlag to welcome us. Normally, we always try not to be before food or after food because we know it's always a challenge. But being investors in ag and food, it's a bit normal to be surrounded by the subject. This being said, we'll try to make it quite interactive and we'll endeavor into the subject matter as efficiently as possible so as to leave you some time to ask us any question you wish to my colleague Sergio and myself. So, impact private debt, real impact versus paper impact. We wanted the title to be a bit engaging and challenging. We hope will not be too boring, but you will let us know if that was the case. So, rapidly, our DNA. So, as INOKS Capital, we are a Swiss asset manager, prudentially regulated by FINMA. We have 20 years of experience. We're what I call early stage, time-wise, impact fund manager. We started impact and ESG at the time. Obviously, it was not impact and ESG. It was called activist funding with ethical bias in 2006. And it was no negative externalities, which is the do no harm evolution, and positive externalities, which became the impact evolution. We, again, are specialized in the ag and food farm to fork value chains. We do private debt under collective investment schemes since 2006. We have a global know-how. Our strength and team experience is direct investment, which is obviously very helpful when you deal with impact. Everything we do in-house in the investment cycle, from sourcing, which is research-driven, to divestment. And obviously, we are institutional and DNA-prone. So if we talk about quickly DNA, for us, sustainability, excellence, ag and food, global capabilities, and are tested, or in summary, the core of our DNA and where we come from after 20 years. What is it that we do and what is activist funding, as it was called in 2006 and became impact private debt, is that basically we seek to provide capital for growth to real economy, corporates which are active in the ag and food value chains, and whereby our investee must generate tangible value, operate across that specific value chain farm to fork, be non-speculative in nature, and as an approach, we seek to have tailor-made, ESG-aligned, positive impact, and Article 9 SFDR investment. Under that simple formula, we deployed a little north of 8 billion to date. Now, so much for the bragging, and let's go to the core of the subject. Impact framework. Our vision of impact framework is that it should be an internal procedure that defines the national and international standards whereby which are followed. It formalizes how the principles are applied across the full investment cycle. It outlines the tool to ensure correct standards are applied in every transaction. It sets the responsibilities for our staff and management to operate such impact framework. There is the matter of the periodic revision, and in our case, the open periodic re-verification. On these few notes, I will let my colleague Sergio to now delve into the details and intricacies of what is an impact framework for us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sergio Sanchez here. I'm the Senior Impact Analyst at INOKS Capital. So the topic for today was called paper impact versus real impact. I cannot claim ownership of that topic, and I don't want to create any polemics here with the versus. But if we get a bit into the detail of what real impact is and how we can differentiate between claiming impact to achieving that real impact through investment, I believe that the key difference is not in the intent, but in the process. And that's the reason why we have built a strong impact framework that sets and defines our processes, our tools, defines our standards, and it helps us to embed this impact across the entire investment life cycle. From, I don't know if you can see it properly, but from the origination of the investments all the way to post-investment management of the portfolio and even the investment. We're going to come back to this slide in a bit. Our impact framework is not a marketing tool. As Nabil mentioned already, it's built on the OPIN principles, is externally verified and audited regularly. It's aligned with SFDR, it's aligned with SFDR, IBC performance standards, SDGs, which of course helps us manage impact internally, of course helps us with explaining internationally how we manage the impact, but also helps our investees because everything flows from the top of our investment all the way to the processes that we support our investments and investees to implement. And we can go into a bit more detail on how we do that in a bit. We have a impact framework that combines impact and ESG. We call it the do good and do no harm strategy, the two sides of the same coin. On the impact side, we focus on 4 impact themes, which means that all of the investments, all of the companies that we invest in have to, from the outset, prove that they contribute positively to at least one of the 4 impact themes that we target. And these are food security, poverty reduction, women empowerment, and environmental quality. We verify that the claimed impact is true through quantitative tools that we have in-house. We use impact questionnaires with over 100 KPIs. We have internally developed scoring tools that allows us to compare investees and also to monitor progress. In this way, all of the claims made by our potential investees or all of the impact claims that we make are backed by data. At the bottom of the right-hand side, you also see the do no harm side, the ESG part of our impact framework. With this, we build real safeguards across our portfolio, across our investments. We follow the IBC performance standards. We integrate them through the due diligence, pre-investment, but also during renewal. As Nabil mentioned, we are a specialist in providing short-term capital, which means that facilities come to a renewal regularly, and that means that we re-review for impact and ESG our investments. Each investment includes a ESAP and CGAP, basically environmental and social action plans and corporate governance action plans. These are joined together with specific impact targets that we identify for each of our investees and become part of the legal documentation of the investments. So that way we enshrine both impact and ESG within the investment documentation and ensure that these principles are followed through and through the investment. What happens if a company doesn't comply with the ESG principles that we agree with them? We have processes, in-house processes to flag them. We as the impact and ESG team have processes to flag that to our investment committees and management. That starts a process of the company having to come up with solutions. If they are not good enough, the recommendation can always be to divest and that's what the process includes. Every year, both from the impact side and ESG side, we collect impact and ESG data, again, through the in-house developed tools to monitor how our companies are progressing. Going back to the point of providing with short-term working capital, that doesn't mean that the investees become part of our portfolio, the facilities run out, and then they exit our portfolio and we never work with them again. In many of the cases, facilities are renewed, and we continue that partnership with them and review the targets so that impact becomes more and more embedded in the operations. I'm gonna quickly go back to this slide, which actually has a bit more detail on exactly how does that look like and what we do. We're not a fund of funds. We invest directly into companies. We include these impact targets that I mentioned and the ESAPs that I mentioned, and these include from actions like something general of a development of an ESMS that could be applied to pretty much every company out there, but also on specific risks on the ESG side that we identify per company, being where they sit within the value chain, the country where they are, etc., etc. Similar to the impact side, the targets are normally aligned to the areas where they already generate positive impact to increase that impact, or the areas where they have a potential but they have not started to develop it. Could be on women empowerment. We could be working with a company that has a very strong contribution to food security but has not yet started to actively include women within the value chain, and then we identify targets for them to start doing that. Early targets could be something just as simple as have an internal process and monitoring tool to actually know how many women are in your value chain, so that once you start measuring things, then you can start putting targets. And then from that onwards, we can build on those initial targets. Technical assistance, we don't have a bot specifically that we can use for technical assistance, but we identify with our investees where they need additional support. On these yearly monitoring processes that we run with the questionnaires, one of the questions every year is, do you need more help on any of the areas related to impact and ESG? Most often they say they identify areas, otherwise we can also suggest. And what we do as a team is we support them to identify where they can apply for specific technical assistance programs and support them with the submission. So we sit down with them, we go through the questionnaire, submit everything with them, etc. And lastly, on this slide, there's a fourth pillar on managing investments with impact that is rarely recognized. It's difficult to be recognized through a flag, such as the LAX flag. It's difficult to recognize through a standard, and it's how the investments are managed, how the team that manages the investments actually work with the investees. INOKS management always talks about how we are an activist investor, activist not in the political sense, but activist in the sense of how actively we manage investments. And that goes from working with commodity producers and understanding the business model so well that then we can support them with finding off-takers, finding better ways to, or more efficient ways to run their business. Or as from the impact and ESG perspective, sitting down with them and supporting on how to implement EUDR, for example. That's it on the impact framework. Lastly, all of the impact and ESG achievements over the years, we publish in our annual impact reports. If you go into our website, you can find the last one covering 23-24, and the last one is currently in the oven, so it's being cooked as we speak. And to finish off, because I'm hoping some of you are asking yourselves, how does that look in practice? We wanted to bring a couple of case studies on how our investments look like. First one, JCAT, a soybean producer in Togo. Togo is a country where around 30% of the population live with $2 a day. We have invested in them and support the financing the storage, the transport, and the exports. On 2024, they reached 6,500 smallholder farmers, 2,000 of them being women, and they work with them, paying them on the same day, paying them price premiums based on quality of the product, and also providing them with agronomy training. And we know this because, again, we ask the questions, we gather the data, we understand what they're doing, and we manage the investment from the impact side. Another one, MMLA, Liberian, in the wheat processing business, really high contribution to food security, because basically what they do is supporting local value addition and creation in Liberia. They process wheat so that there's an alternative to rice imports. Thanks to our investment, they actually, because we didn't do it, they did it. They were able to be more strategic with their procurement and how they manage their stocks, which then freed up some resources to invest into more environmental energy sources to use through their production, but also invest in a feed mill, which means that wheat barn that was a waste from the product, now they can turn it into feed for poultry and find not only an additional revenue source, but also become much more sustainable. And lastly, one of my favorites in the portfolio, if I am allowed to have a favorite, maybe just because I'm a coffee lover, but this organization is brilliant. They're based in Peru. They work with around almost 3,000 families in the coffee production business in Peru again. 100% of the production from the smallholder farmers they work with is organic, and they use the surplus or the additional income that they get by selling coffee with the organic stamp to then reinvest in the local society. They have partnerships with local authorities and the organizations that know the needs of the localities, and they support them financing roads, schools, etc., etc. And also providing with training on organic production to the smallholder farmers. So hopefully these three give you a sense of how the investments look like. 12 minutes to the end, so I think it's a good point now to ask for any questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please shoot them.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about how you incentivize your investment team, more specifically performance fees and in private capital funds that you often have we have this concept of carried interest. And I'm quite interested in understanding, do you have like an impact performance fee or an impact success fee, albeit it's quite complicated to structure, but do you have any views? Do you use that within your fund structures?
Yeah, I'll take that one, if you allow me, Sergio. First of all, we're in private market, but we seed for 95% of our investments on the private debt side, so there is no carry. So basically, we don't make as much money as private equity guys. We don't fly jets and stuff like that. We're quite humble for many other reasons. So we don't have this carry incentive, so to speak, to play with. We have a bonus policy for the team, of course, and we try to remunerate the team according to performance. Now, as to impact index performance, for our European product, which we're launching now, which is focused on the EU27 Agri Transition Fund. So it's a fund which is a bit different because it's focused exclusively on the EU27 country, and it seeks to promote SMEs and mid-market companies, which is supporting the agricultural transition in the EU to a fairer, healthier, and more efficient value chain. So basically the anti-pack, if we can say so. It's a big postulate. And there, it's a closed-ended vehicle, and definitely the performance fee is calculated at the end of the vehicle, live, so it's not accrued whatsoever. So it's calculated on residual. And aside of the performance above a certain hurdle rate, then the performance fee is only collectible by the manager, 50% on the basis of 100% compliance with CNS targets, so the ESG part of the let's say, qualitative and quantitative results of the investments. And for the other 50% of the performance fee is directly indexed to the KPI targets in terms of impact. So each investment is valued in terms of impact rating at the investment level. It has impact targets to be achieved at the end of the life cycle of the investments. And according to how much they are met, then we are able to collect the performance fee. So that means that we are 100% in such kind of vehicles indexed to also the impact delivery. And actually, the financial delivery does not even mean that you're going to get a performance fee. So that's really extremist. Well, I mean, there are many shades of gray in the between. Huh? I gave you the most extreme vision that we applied for that vehicle.
Good afternoon, Nicoletta Centofanti, LSFI. Congratulations for the amazing work you're doing. In terms of investors' appetite, would you see yourself satisfied with the, let's say, traction you have with your potential client? You know, is the market somehow saturated, or you struggle in finding, you know, investments? And if you know or have assessed the reason why?
I mean, I'll take that one. Not that I want to monopolize, but it's a bit my role as a CEO. I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years, so we didn't start yesterday. It was not even on the block or on the map. After 20 years of experience, I'm going to be politically incorrect. Investors don't give a damn. Investors want performance, and you have to deliver performance. For most investors, impact is a nice to have and tick the box. ESG is also a nice to have and tick the box. But primarily, investors are there to make money. And there is a difference between investments and philanthropy. And for us, 2023, 2024 have been extremely difficult years, because if we look on 20 years of investments that we have had, we've bet any index, any asset class you can call it, on an unleveraged basis. We returned, I'm not bragging, 8.3% net per annum, which is quite substantial over a 20-year period if you think about it. Yet, it suffices that like 2023, 2024, where base lending rates are very high, and you're not able to follow one-on-one on the increase on base lending rate, and investors are benchmarking you against a T-bill. A T-bill will unlikely generate the kind of impact we generate, but investors don't care. So it's the rule, and we know it. So we have to perform on both the performance in terms of financial and ESG compliance and impact delivery. It's the equation that we chose for ourselves, so we can't complain. It's difficult. It's very difficult.
Hi, I'm Claudia Dambax, working for Impact, actually in AFM in the impact finance sector. So I would just like to jump on the investors give a damn. Maybe we are dreamers in the impact world still, you know, but I strongly believe that we should go a step beyond. I will speak later, and actually I should have come before you. But anyways, how do you see, nevertheless, if you look at the investor landscape, I mean, there are differences. You know, family offices are coming. They're completely having different values. And
Agreed.
I mean, me, from my heart, from my values, I really hope on them, and I hope in maybe not 1 year, but maybe 3 or 5 years, you will not repeat. The investors will give a damn.
100%. I can only concord with you. At the end of the day, when you have a sizable size, if I can say so, you look mostly at institutional investors, which have a prism, a vision, which is fairly well formatted. investors such as important family offices like you mean, like asset owners, which are applying a capital for purpose view, then they are sticky investors and they tend to appreciate what you do. Unfortunately, institutional investors, if they have filled the bucket is filled. And when they need to empty it, they empty it. They don't care. Unfortunately, that's that. But capital for purpose for us, I mean, we dream to work for capital of purpose, but we understand we're not doing philanthropy. But that's our dream. We share your dream. I have a dream.
Yes. Thank you, Jan. Nice presentation indeed. So you say you're investing in a lot of these kind of agricultural projects. So the kind of a chicken egg thing in for a lot of these projects will be what methodology do you use to measure the impact, the effectiveness? You have test results. Do you also kind of help project developers to set the right standard use out of the 200 different ways of measuring what you do? Can you help them with basically setting that up properly in a way that it meets your criteria? It's a bit of a more an iterative process than setting the standard.
Absolutely. I will leave my colleague Sergio. We do that through action plan, but you will detail that.
Yeah. So of course we gather these KPIs that I was mentioning earlier. That we gather the same KPIs across all of our portfolio. It's 150 something KPIs on impact and ESG. But on top of that, and specifically to every one of the investments, we agree with our investees, and I stress they agree with them, impact targets and ESAPs, environmental and social action plans. And again, we agree with them. So we focus on the 4 impact themes that form the pillars of our impact framework. Identify with them which ones of the potential targets that we have thought about align better with their own operations, with their own businesses. So, for instance, in the example of Modern Mills of Liberia, a wheat processor in Liberia that sells the final product in the local market, one of the impact targets that we agreed with them is not only increase the market that you cover, but also start targeting the rural areas that normally are harder to reach, so that more of your product that serves as an alternative to other staple foods reach the people that need it the most. And that created a process of implementing a system to actually know where the wheat is reaching, who are our customers, what prices they pay. And that's also information that they send to us, not just for us to audit, but also as a way of showing us what they've done, so that then we can rethink what the next target is, and we support them increasing the impact. So hopefully that responds to your question.
Yeah.
Reporting is massive, right? If you can help, especially smaller companies with building that infrastructure or providing a platform.
Yeah. No, the engagement is very important. The issue of engagement is very important. So just to rebound on the queries, if we still have 2 minutes, I'll try to make my best. But basically, the way we identify opportunities, top-down research. So we look at the value chain and we look at the inherent potential to comply with ESG or have issues in terms of ESG and therefore devise mitigation. And then the inherent potentiality for the value chain to generate impacts in the 4 teams. Then we analyze the segments in the value chain and we try to focus on the segment which offers the best mitigation capabilities or ESG compliance and the maximum impact generation capabilities on an inherent basis. So that's the macro validation. And then at the micro level, when we go and identify these companies or these projects that are starting up, and we choose SMEs and mid-market because we can influence their behavior in the activist sense of the term. We can help them being formatted in that way and maximize this impact generation and ensure further this ESG compliance. Through this approach, which is both macro and micro validation, using our KPIs and our system, we also embed their better corporate governance in terms of reporting formats and so forth. So they are themselves going forward in what we call the riddle effect. It's the way they engage their suppliers, the way they engage their off-takers, the way they engage all the stakeholders that they interact with. And that has a multiplying effect.
And just quickly, please keep an eye on our socials, because the impact report that we issue in this year, we're doing a deep dive of the value chain, the segments, and why we invest in each of the segments, what the reasons are from an impact perspective to actually invest in the segments, and what the ESG risks of them are. So if you're interested, please keep an eye.
Should come just before Christmas.
There's a deadline for me
That's
there.
24, 25, because it's the deadline.
Thank you very much, Nabil and Sergio. That was really interesting.